We're almost halfway through the year. And that means that a lot of us are sitting here looking at that last 6 months of the year and thinking, how can I make this the 6 months that I follow through on my biggest dreams, that I start to actually see momentum and start to change my life? Well, I have 3 major reasons today why you might not be following through with the plans that you've made in the past and how you can change that for the last half of this year and truly change your life forever. So raise your hand if you have made elaborate plans in the past, goals, you've set goals, you've decided the person you want to be, you've gotten everything in order, and then when it comes time to actually follow through, you just haven't been able to do it. This was my life for so very long, and after working on myself for a very long time, researching lots of productivity tools and working with thousands of students now in my HB90 course, I have some reasons why you might not be following through and some solutions for you that I want to share today that I'm hopeful will really help you. So one of the first reasons you might not be following through is that your plan is impossible. This is really confusing for us sometimes because we sit down, we think we've created the perfect plan, but I really and truly feel like when we plan, we are pretending or kind of trying on a different personality, that we are getting super optimistic about this time I'm going to really follow through. This time I'm going to do the routine. This time I'm going to be different. This time I'm going to write 3,000 words a day instead of 1,000. And it's almost as if we're planning for a different person. We're planning for this paper doll, Pinterest worthy, that girl, whatever, perfect version of ourselves. And we think we're going to have better habits. This time I'm going to have better routines. This time I'm going to actually follow through 100%. I'm going to get up early. I'm going to not be so distracted by my phone. And we sit down and we create a plan that doesn't really take into account how we are now. It's as if we're planning to quantum leap into this better version of ourselves without actually creating that person, without creating those habits. So we're planning for habits we don't even have yet. And I have been notorious about doing this in my past as well, is I would sit down with my plan and my color code and I would get excited, and it would be like this putting on rose-colored glasses, and I was planning for this better version of myself, the version of myself I wish I could be. And I would create my plan for her, hoping that she was going to show up on day one and save me from this life of feeling frustrated that I never follow through with my goals. But day one of the plan, executing it, following through with it, I wasn't that person and she didn't show up. And so it was always frustrating because I would get 1 or 2 weeks into my plan and I'm already so far behind. I'm not following through. And that just made me feel worse and worse about myself. So why do we do this to ourselves? Let me know in the comments if you have been guilty of doing this as well. Why do we do this? My theory is, one, that we're scared. We're scared that we're running out of time, that we're already too late, that if we don't accomplish this as fast as possible, that we're never going to be able to accomplish it. We're too old. We've missed the boat. We are too young. We don't have the right experience. Like, I have to get it done in the next 90 days or it's never going to happen for me. Or we see examples of other people living that life and we think, I need to get there as fast as possible. And when we put that time pressure on ourselves and we tell ourselves, if I don't do it, I'll never do it. If I don't do it fast, I'll never do it. Then we create unrealistic plans that don't really meet us where we are. And so it's like self-sabotage, basically. We're creating plans out of fear that we're not going to be this person. And then the joke's on us because if we want to be that perfect version of ourselves, that person with better habits and better routines, we have to actually take the time to create and cultivate those habits. And we so often don't do that. We just want to become that person overnight. So that fear is there. And believe me, I relate to that so much. Another reason, besides just that we're afraid we're going to run out of time, is that when we sit down to plan. We get excited for the possibilities of our lives. And we're planning often from that place of excitement for that outcome that we're going to achieve. Oh my goodness, if I could just finish this novel, think of how my life could be. And so then we want that effect now. So it's kind of instant gratification issue. And it could be a mixture of both those things, which seem like they're at odds with each other, like fear and excitement, but often they do exist inside of us. And we say, okay, I'm scared I'm going to run out of time, but I'm so excited that if I could just follow through this one time, I could change my whole life. And we end up creating a plan that isn't realistic. We plan for the person we wish we were. We plan for the time we wish we had rather than planning for our reality. And it can be a very sobering experience to sit down and plan for the migraines, the responsibilities, the lack of time, the lack of energy, the days when you're not going to feel great. Like it can be hard to plan that way. But when we plan to be perfect all the time, we're just really setting ourselves up for getting even more behind, for not following through. And the other thing that sometimes makes our plans impossible is, like I said, we're planning for the time we wish we had. So we're just thinking, okay, I've got this project. Do I think I can finish that in the next couple months? Yeah, that seems achievable. And then we take an entirely different project, Project B, and we say, well, does that seem achievable in 90 days? Yeah, that could be done. And we don't consider the fact that we're trying to do both of these big projects in the same 90 days. We're just thinking, okay, this one, I'm going to take this one in a vacuum. I'm going to look at only Project C. Can I finish that in the next couple months? Yeah, I could do that. And before we know it, we have 6 huge projects that are going to take 90 days. And we think we're going to do them all in the same 90 days. And instead, what we've ended up doing is putting 540 days worth of plans on our plate for the next 3 months. And then when it's impossible to follow through because we can't work 75 hours a day, we blame ourselves and we say we're lazy, and we look at it as evidence that we can't ever follow through, that we're not good enough, that we're running out of time, that we're getting so behind. And that just completes this negative cycle. So what's the solution? Well, for me, the best, most effective solution has been to create a plan that meets me where I am, that takes into consideration the time I need to spend with the kids, the time cleaning the house, the grocery shopping I have to do, the fact that once a month I'm maybe having a really bad day. Those kinds of plans can sometimes feel difficult because we wish we had more time. We wish we had more habits that supported us. We wish we had better routines. But what I find is that if I can let go of that expectation of myself to be perfect and to go fast and to get it all done at once, that when I meet myself where I am and I say, okay, I'm not going to be this perfect Pinterest Sarah, I'm just going to be me, and I really look at the time that I have, then I can effectively plan for what is my main priority here. What are the main things I want to get done? And that's when I stop wasting my time on comparing myself to other people, putting things on my plate that really aren't going to move the needle. I get really hyper focused on, okay, if this is all the time I have, how do I make the absolute most of it? And that starts to build momentum. And I'm going to talk about momentum a little bit later, but creating a plan that meets me where I am, that plans for the time I actually have and the routines and habits I actually have right now, makes it achievable. And the more I start to realize that it's possible and it is achievable, the more I naturally follow through with it. So try that on for yourself. And of course, if you want a step-by-step guide of how to do this, you can grab my HB90 planner on Etsy, or if you're watching this as it comes out, originally HB90 Bootcamp is open for enrollment for this Sunday, so you just have a couple more days to join, or it will be open at the end of every quarter to plan for the next upcoming quarter. And I promise you, this will give you a whole new look at how to plan for your time and how to make your plans achievable. Reason number 2, you're not following through with your plan is because you're only focused on this big, vague, final outcome. So what I mean by this is that instead of giving yourself clear, small, micro tasks or micro actions, you just have this big idea of what it is you want to accomplish. So an example might be, I just want to publish a book by the end of this year. And in some ways that sounds really simple and it sounds really clear. But when you sit down to work on that goal, where do you even start? Should I work on my writing? Is this the right book to write? What should my pen name be? So what this might look like in a typical day is you've got 2 hours that you've set aside to write. You sit down, but you're not 100% clear how much you need to write right now. It just feels like I need to get it done as quickly as possible. So maybe you write a little bit, but then you also start to think, oh my gosh, I really should be starting on my website. And maybe I should post this to social media because I need to start building up my social media following. So because you have all these other tasks that go along with publishing your book, when you sit down to write, it feels like I've got all these thousands of tasks that are kind of distracting me in my brain. You might sit down to write 90,000 words, but it feels so big. How do I even get this done? I'm not even sure what I'm doing. So then we try to soothe ourselves by going to social media. And it feels like research because we really should be more active on TikTok. And then we think, okay, I could actually record a TikTok real quick of how my desk looks or what my writing process is like. So you post that real quick, even though you haven't been very active lately and you're not really building your social media following. And then you notice that some other author on there is talking about her new book. And so you go to her website to go look at it. And then you think, oh my goodness, I should be working on my own website. So then you spend 45 minutes to an hour stuck in a rabbit hole of Wix versus Squarespace versus WordPress. And then you start to realize I can't even start a website until I have a brand. So you're off to Pinterest to start looking at branding boards. And then you start getting into, well, should I use Pinterest? Is that something that would help me as an author? And before you know it, you've followed this rabbit hole from one to another, and you've spent your 2 hours that you could have been writing or working on your website or building your brand or whatever it is you could do in a focused manner. Instead, you've been kind of ping-ponging around between lots of different things. And before you know it, at the end of 3 months, you've been really busy, but you've really accomplished almost nothing. And part of that comes from having this vague goal. I'm going to publish a book by the end of the year. So what's the solution? The solution is to get super clear on exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish in this period of time. This is why I love to plan for 90 days, because if I start even now and say I'm going to plan everything I'm going to do for the rest of this year, I can get too distracted because the projects get too big. And I followed this rabbit hole of maybe I should do this, but maybe I should do this. And it becomes very difficult to manage 6 full months. But 90 days is just long enough to focus on a project and actually see momentum, see results, see if it's working or not. But it's not so long that we allow ourselves to get too distracted or so long that we get so off course that we can't correct. So 90 days for me has been perfect. And what I love to do to get rid of this distraction cycle is to get really clear on the exact outcome. So instead of saying, I want to publish a book by the end of the year, what I might say is 2 separate goals. I would say I want to finish writing 40,000 words by the end of this quarter. And my second part of my goal is I want to get my brand and my website completed by the end of this quarter. Then I'm really focused on which pieces of that publish my book puzzle I'm going to do in the next 90 days. And I take into consideration that first step, which is how much time do I really have? What habits do I actually have? And once you combine those things, you start to get really clear on exactly what it is you want to do. And when you set those goals, like I'm going to write 40,000 words of this book by the end of the quarter, then you can break that down into micro actions. Like I'm going to write 1,000 words today. Or when it comes to your website, you have it broken down into not just I'm going to complete a website, but step 1, research which website platform. Step 2, make a decision and sign up for an account. Step 3, and you create a list of micro actions that you're going to take to get you to that final result of my website is completed. And part of what that does for our brains, for many of us, is that clarity of a single micro action that we can complete in a single day or a single hour gives us focus on exactly what we need to do when we sit down. When we sit down and there's a potential for 50,000 different things that we could be doing, it becomes really easy to say, this is too big, I'm just going to distract myself. But when we sit down and we say, I'm going to decide today, Wix, Squarespace, or WordPress, then we have a very detailed focus on exactly what we're going to accomplish. And that leads me into step number 3, which is positive momentum. So I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Clarity equals focus. And I do know that we have a lot of people here who have ADHD, or who, because of social media and all the things that have been going on, you have symptoms of ADHD, and it makes it difficult to focus. This is why self-exploration, getting to know yourself, your own patterns, can be super, super powerful, because you can take my advice and then you can take your knowledge of how you work, how your brain works, how you best focus yourself, and then you can arrange your day and your tasks like that. So for me, one of the biggest things that I did to create focus in my life was to create a Kanban board where I had those little micro actions written down on sticky notes, where it wasn't out of sight, out of mind in some planner. It was literally up on my wall, and all I had to do was pick out a sticky note and say, this is the thing I'm going to get accomplished right now. And that has been a focus tool for me. But there might be other things that work for you. So it could be body doubling. It could be setting a timer for yourself. It could be as simple as figuring out what's the most exciting way for me to really get, hyped up and focused and excited to complete this task. What can I do to gamify it so that I can give myself rewards or give myself points? There are lots of options as to how you can bring in focus. But when we have this huge focus of, I'm going to publish a book, it lacks clarity, and it makes it so much easier for us to get distracted. So the solution: get really clear on the outcome that you're trying to achieve. Finish the website, get this many followers, start my TikTok, whatever it is, create that project, and then break it down into micro actions or tasks that you can complete in a single session, and see if that type of clarity, that level of clarity, helps you focus and follow through. Reason number 3 you're not following through, I told you we would come back around to this, is that you've been building negative momentum, that you're in a cycle of negative momentum. And what I mean by this is that you haven't followed through on so many of the tasks, like this big impossible plan for yourself. You've been busy, but you're not seeing the results. And so when you look at your goals and you start to think about all the work you've done and you feel like you haven't really made any progress, it can start to feel really heavy. Like, this isn't going to happen for me. It's not as easy for me as it is for other people. I'm working so hard and I'm not seeing the results I want. I never follow through with my plans. I'm just not the kind of person. You get the idea. We can start really negative talk to ourselves, and we can actually begin to look for evidence in our world of why we're not good enough for our goals, of why we're too late, of why it's never going to happen for us, of why we just aren't the kind of people that can follow through with plans, or why we're not a good enough writer, why we're not interesting enough for social media. There's a million things that you might be thinking in your head. And tell me, really take a moment as you're watching this and be thinking, do you have a constant negative conversation going on in your head about what you're capable of and what you're going to accomplish in your life? Sometimes we can get ourselves hyped up, especially when we're creating that plan, right? We can get really excited for the plan. But then when we start to follow through and we're just not doing it, we're not doing the work, we're not showing up, we're getting too distracted, we're seeing evidence everywhere that we're not good enough, we start to spiral into negative headspace. And I will tell you, because I tracked this very religiously for myself for a little over a year, that when I am in a negative headspace where everything feels overwhelming, where I feel like I'm not good enough, where I'm saying negative things to myself in my head, or I feel negative, I feel like I'm comparing myself to other people, I am maybe 1/8 as productive as when I'm feeling joyful and excited about the work that I'm doing. And there's absolutely a correlation for so many of us between how we feel and how we produce. And so often we tie our self-worth to how much we're getting done. And so we put more on our plate than we can handle. And we basically make an impossible plan, like I was talking about in step 1. We don't have clarity, so we get easily distracted, like I was talking about in step 2. And all of that, what we sometimes perceive as failing to follow through, leads to this negative spiral of, I don't believe that I'm capable of this. I don't know that I can accomplish this. And it really takes away our excitement and motivation to continue to follow through. So what's the solution? What do we do about it? So one thing is to zoom out until you can find evidence of your wins. So what this might mean is that maybe over the last week, you've had a few hard days, but if you zoom out and you really start to reflect on how far you've come in the last month, maybe you can see a little bit of progress there. If not, if it still feels like, wow, I've just had a really bad month, or even 2023 has been a really hard year, then zoom farther out. What about the last 2 years? Have you finished a book? Have you actually written your first rough draft? If you can't find evidence in the last couple of years, zoom even further out. What about 10 years ago? Where were you? Have you seen progress in your life over the last 10 years? And sometimes you zoom out as far as you need to until you find some evidence of wins in your life. What were times when you actually followed through with something and it felt really good, when you were really proud of yourself? What are, sometimes when we're just looking at the last little bit, we don't give ourselves credit because we didn't follow through on this big impossible plan. We think that we're not really getting anywhere. But when we zoom out and we look at the last year, we realize, oh my gosh, I actually gained 1,000 followers on Instagram, or I actually completed that project. And sometimes we're just not giving ourselves credit for those milestones. So one of the first things for your mindset that you can do is to zoom out until you begin to see the wins. And then I want you to start collecting the wins. So either it becomes a weekly review process, or whether it becomes a file on your computer where you're taking screenshots of that first review, or it just becomes a gratitude journal that you keep. Start collecting your wins. Start looking for evidence of all the ways that you are winning in life. You've made a difference for this person. You've made a difference in your own life. You followed through with this. You got your room clean. You made a step. And it could be really, really small things. I made my bed today. I got out of bed and I wrote 500 words today. Any tiny wins, start writing them down, and understand that all progress is a win. So this is another small but effective mindset shift, is that sometimes we think, if I set a goal to publish a book by the end of the year, and I didn't actually publish it and start my whole career by the end of the year, I'm a failure. But the truth is, there are lots of wins that you did achieve within that goal. You just didn't achieve the final outcome. And sometimes we place way too much importance on that final destination. It's like, okay, so you didn't get the book published by the end of the year, but you'll get it published by next year. But what you did do was you made significant progress on your website. You made a decision about your pen name. You did this course called Publish and Thrive, and it started to catapult you into this other level of understanding how to market your books and get your LLC started. And so sometimes we just look at that end goal and say, well, I didn't hit 10,000 subscribers, so it was a failure. But maybe you got to 5,000 subscribers, and that was double where you were at the beginning of the year. So finding a way to celebrate all progress as a win and be just as excited for a little bit of progress as a quantum leap can do wonders for starting to build positive momentum. Because we've heard people talk about spiraling, like I'm spiraling, right? I'm out of control. And it's usually used in a negative context. But I promise you that you can also spiral your way to joy. You can spiral your way to feeling positive. And it's as simple as looking for those wins, celebrating all progress as a win, and then following through with these other two steps that I was talking about, creating a realistic, achievable plan that meets you where you are, breaking that plan down into really clear, achievable steps that you can get done today. And then at the end of every day saying, well, I may not have gotten all 10 things done that I wanted to, but I got this one main thing, and that is progress, and that is a win. Begin to use that as a staircase and stack win on top of win on top of win. A win does not have to mean I achieved every single thing. It just means I made a little bit of progress today. And whatever that looks like for you, that's a win. So the more you celebrate it, the more you start to move forward, and the more things feel achievable and possible and exciting, and the more you start to follow through with your plans. So those are my biggest tips for how to start following through with your plan. And of course, we're all different. We all have different challenges. We all have different personalities and things that spur us on. But the more we can create clear steps for ourselves, believe in ourselves, take a true realistic look at our time and plan for the time we have, it's going to help all of us. And this is one of my great passions in life, is figuring out this puzzle of productivity, finding this balance of getting it done, but also not beating myself up when I'm not the most productive person, learning how to celebrate a little bit of progress step by step and really enjoy the journey. That is one of my true purposes in life. If this really resonated with you and you think, gosh, I really do want to learn to plan this way, to learn to appreciate the things that I've done, make an achievable plan and start building positive momentum, then I hope that you will come and join us in the HB90 Bootcamp. This course truly changes lives, and it would be my honor to support you in achieving all of your biggest goals, because trust me, by now and to the end of this year, you could see more progress than you've seen in years combined. So I would love to support you in that. And if you're interested, I will leave that link for you down below. You have until Sunday at noon Eastern time to join. And then we have a kickoff call coming up. And this is one of the great things about the HB90 Bootcamp, is that once you're in, you have lifetime access, meaning that you can attend my live kickoff call, which is basically just a 1-hour pep talk every single quarter to get yourself recentered. And you can watch all the videos and go through the process with us again. And we have thousands of alumni that go through this every single time. And I would love for you to join that community. So if you're interested, come join us. And I will hopefully see you on that kickoff call on Sunday. But if not, I will see you here on Heart Breathings for my next video. All my love to you, and I'm wishing you the most productive second half of the year ever. See you next time. Bye.